is working.
Oh, and mine.
Never gonna turn off.
Mine's not turning.
It doesn't mutter anything under your breath.
What? Oh, yeah, mine's working. I don't know. I turned it off.
Okay,
He's turning all of them on to leave them on.
Okay.
Yeah, we're leaving them all on.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to begin with, item 14, which is the recommendation to remove stipulations for Oak Grove School District. Consultant Sarah Solari Colombini will introduce this item. Joining the meeting electronically are institutional representative Susan Kind and team lead Allison DeMark, who will present the report. Does anyone need to recuse themselves? No? All right, Dr. Solari Colombini, will you begin, please?
Yes. Good afternoon. This item is a report on the revisit to Oak Grove School District that was scheduled for May 1st and 2nd of this year. I am joined at the table via Zoom with the team lead, Allison DeMark, and Oak Grove's Induction Program Director, Susan Kind. In February of 2016, a site visit was conducted at Oak Grove School District as part of the normal accreditation activities. Following that visit, a presentation of the site visit report occurred at the COA meeting on March 11th of 2016, and the COA recommended that Oak Grove receive accreditation with stipulations, submit quarterly reports, and also have a revisit to address the 2 induction program standards that were not met and the 1 program standard that was met with concerns. Sorry. Before I turn it over to the team lead, Dr. Allison DeMark, I'd like to thank Susan Kind and Oak Grove School District for hosting the revisit and for the commitment that they have had to improve their program, and also to thank our team lead, Dr. DeMark, for her guidance to the program throughout the year. So, Dr. DeMark, are you available and ready?
They're all muted.
She's supposed to be talking.
Who are you asking?
Dr. Allison DeMark.
She just needs to start talking.
Allison, you can start presenting if you can hear this.
Looks like she can't hear it. So I don't know.
Allison, can you hear us?
Marco.
She looked like she's on, but not on.
She's here.
Let me text.
Melissa's sending her a chat.
Oh,
I don't know if she'll
just
look at it
says,
though. Most people don't.
We don't have sound.
Well, that's Jamal.
Turn your.
Let me see.
No.
Hold on. Try again.
Okay, I can hear.
Can you hear us now?
There we go.
Oh, yay.
Okay, so now you have
Yay!
sound. Great. So Allison, I just actually introduced you, and I just was thanking Oak Grove for hosting the revisit. So I also mentioned that we had a site visit that resulted in an accreditation with stipulations, and that there were 2 program standards that were not met and 1 that was met with concerns. And so I was introducing you and letting you take over to share with you the results of the revisit.
Perfect. Thank you. Good afternoon, Commission. Hope you are well. I'd also like to thank Oak Grove and Susan Kind for hosting the visit. After our initial site visit in February of 16, Susan Kind, the Oak Grove Induction Director, made significant changes to the Oak Grove Induction Program based on the results of the accreditation report given at that time. This process has been detailed in each of the quarterly reports that have been submitted to the Commission that you've seen at previous COA meetings. When Sarah and I went to visit Oak Grove in the beginning of May to conduct the revisit, we were able to interview participating teachers and support providers who confirmed that the program has been transformed. Yay, Susan! All stakeholders reported satisfaction with the changes and attested to the positive impact that it's had on the teaching practices of the participating teachers in Oak Grove. Some highlights include the district leadership, including the superintendent, sharing that all administrators now have been looped into the feedback cycle. We heard from support providers that they feel that they have the skills and support to be a resource to their participating teachers. And participating teachers not only echoed this sentiment, they added that they felt that they were able to focus on the area of need and align their induction growth goals with the district goals that they set with their site administration. So it was a really positive experience, and it was great working with Susan this past year. And I commend her for her effort and time that she put into the changes that we've all seen in the Oak Grove program.
Great. Thank you so much, Allison, for your time and leadership in this effort. Susan, is there anything that you would like to add to this report? I'll remind you that this is not an opportunity to argue the findings, but to add to them if you would like to provide us with any more information.
No, that was wonderful. I just wanted to thank you again for this opportunity. This was a really good growth opportunity for us, and we are very excited to be moving forward with our new revised program.
Terrific. Thank you. I'd like to open up the conversation to the COA members. Does anybody have a comment or a question? Well, I will say congratulations to you. And at this time, this is an action item. Do I have a motion to accept the findings of the team? I have a motion by Pensaval and a second by Erickson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Allison. We'll
Terrific.
see you.
Thank you.
All
Have
right.
a
Thank
good
you, Ms. Kine, Dr. DeMarc, and Dr. Solari Colombini.
You're stuck with me for one more.
All right. Item 15 is recommendation to remove stipulations for Tehama Department of Education. Again, consultant Sarah Solari Colombini will present this action item. Joining her at the table is institutional representative Maria Diaz. Does anyone need to recuse themselves? All right. Dr. Solari Colombini, will you begin?
Yes, thank you again. So, good afternoon again. This item is a report to address the stipulations for Tehama County Department of Education. The team lead on this visit was Melissa Hall, and she is not going to be able to join us for this report, and so I'll do my best to act on her behalf. We did have multiple discussions prior to this, so she's well aware of what's happening here today, and she's also had discussions with Maria as well, Ms. Diaz from the Tehama Department of Education. So on June 13th of 2016, the COA assigned the status of accreditation with stipulations to Tehama Department of Education. And as a result of the site visit, the accreditation team identified concerns with respect to a couple of standards. There was Common Standard 1, which was educational leadership, Common Standard 2, which was unit and program assessment and evaluation, and then Gen Ed induction, it's the Program Standard 2, communication and collaboration, the Ed Specialist induction program, Standard 2, communication and collaboration, and then standards 5 and 7 of that Ed Specialist induction program, which was admission and field experience and clinical practice. And then with the designated subjects program that Tehama offers, Standard 3, which is early orientation, and Standard 5, which is beginning teacher support and assessment. Kind of interrelated things. They bled over into these programs. And as you see in the report that you have in your agenda item, Ms. Diaz has worked diligently throughout the year to address each of the stipulations in the report to meet the concerns that were identified by the team. And I'm going to let Maria speak to each of those since they were really intertwined. So you can probably do it better justice than I can answer questions after.
So I believe you have the report in front of you. So the concern regarding Common Standard 1, educational leadership, we really worked towards making every effort to actively involve stakeholders in the organization, coordination, and governance of the professional preparation program. And so we made attempts such as reinstating the advisory council, because when I became the program administrator for the induction program, the advisory council was not a very active body, and so I went back and reinstated the group. But I think a couple of challenges have not made our efforts as fruitful as I would like. For instance, we cover 9 counties, 120 school districts, 30,000 square miles. And so the vast region has posed some challenges in getting more stakeholders involved in the advisory council. And even though we offer an online option, I think the fact that we aren't able to build the rapport as a group, has then led to some inconsistent participation on the part of our advisory council. And then given that, it's also, I think, challenging for them when they do participate in our advisory council to take on a governing, come in as a governing body and make decisions around our program when they maybe have missed meetings before and after, as we come back and follow up on some of the decisions. I think another contributing factor has been that we serve many single school districts where the superintendent is also the principal, is also the curriculum and instruction, director, is also the professional development provider, almost short of driving the bus himself. And sometimes I think that's even the case. And so I think, for them, it's challenging to leave their school districts because some of them have to travel as far as 4 hours to meet with us. And there have been occasions where we've had some of our members, confirmed, yes, they are attending our meeting. And then the morning of, we're set up for the online for them to join. And we don't hear from them. And then we get a message, sorry, discipline issue came up, have to address it now. Can't participate. And so some of those challenges are a reality that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. I think also there's been a culture in our region where it hasn't been that shared leadership around teacher development. I think they've seen a lot of their obligation in terms of the financial obligation to pay the program fee, and then kind of leave it up to our program to prepare their teachers and support their teachers during their first 2 years of in the teaching profession, and then help them clear their credentials. And so there hasn't been that shared responsibility. And so I think that commitment also hasn't been there as a result. And so what we've done is, as you can see in the report, we've made several attempts to go directly and then go in a roundabout way to try to get that stakeholder engagement. We've, a coordinator and myself, traveled to all 9 counties and met with superintendents in countywide meetings at some of the different county offices, and where we couldn't meet as a whole county, then we went to some of those different districts and met with them and talked to them about the shifts in the induction standards, the critical role that the administrator plays in the induction process, and how we can partner together to better serve their teachers, and have made some efforts in that regard. We also developed some webinars for targeting specifically administrators, and you can see that as item number 3 under that standard, and offered those online in the morning, about a 45-minute commitment. And there was some participation, but obviously not the level of participation that we would like to see. We also, I also have been consistently attending the Region 2 Curriculum and Instruction Steering Committee with the assistant superintendents for all 9 counties in an effort to have them also be a representative and communicate with us and share that responsibility to understand the needs, the unique needs of the different counties. And so we've made some efforts in communicating with them and keeping them up to date and asking for feedback on different aspects of the program. And then we've also this year conducted focus groups in all 9 counties, again, traveled to all 9 counties and had focus groups with not only mentors and credential candidates, but also site administrators to really begin to build those relationships so that we can, hopefully encourage more participation on their part. Also, we have changed our MOU, and I think that to me is my my hope, the light at the end of the tunnel that I'm hoping that the MOU formalizes that responsibility to participate in our advisory council and to have district representatives that are liaisons to our program and are able to communicate back and forth special needs or certain things that are coming up in the year and be that consistent communication throughout the year with us, to have that contact person, because it is hard to communicate with as many districts as we serve in all 9 counties, 30,000 square miles. And then through our leadership team, we have representatives in our leadership team that are our professional development providers. And when I first became the program administrator, we had 9 professional development providers, and now we have 24. And each of these are from the different counties so that they understand the culture of those counties as we provide professional development in those areas and are able to also be part of that decision-making group that is able to guide us in improving our program to better meet the needs of the different counties and the districts within those counties. And we also have professional development providers not only from our public schools, but also private schools, charter schools, from the university. We have 2 professional development providers now that are also adjunct professors at the university, so that there's also that communication with IHEs and then the preliminary programs that are where the majority of our schools are our teachers are from, or that are going through those programs. And also just developing specialized planning teams within our group of professional development providers and other county-wide resources available in our region. So that has been our effort, and I think that the MOUs, I think, will formalize that and really communicate that shared responsibility. And our efforts are not just to send it out, but to actually go back out to all 9 counties in August and talk to them about why those certain items are so critical and why we're asking that commitment be made upfront, formalized, and that attendance is consistent in our advisory council meetings from here on out. So I think those have been our efforts around the standard that I think has been challenging, but the most challenging for us. Did you want me to go through each one of the other items?
No, I think that's so. It was really when the site visit occurred, the programmatic pieces Tehama was able to address fairly quickly last year and pull together with a designated subjects piece and the induction piece, the idea of tying the ILP to a candidate's professional growth. Those were the disparaging kind of out there issues, and you were able to pull those together quickly.
Yes.
Why the recommendation is to still maintain the stipulation on standard 1 is because what hasn't been systematized yet is this actively involving the coordination, the organization, coordination, and governance of all the stakeholders. And so Maria has developed this MOU just recently. It's been in the last end of May and June, and we've been working with the team lead as well on this. And so, as she said, she's going to bring it out in August, roll it out to all of the participants, and hopefully get more of this formal, active buy-in with the program. And so that's why you see the recommendation to maintain that stipulation. As you see with the rest of the evidence in the report, everyone was jumping on board. It was a matter of just aligning things and having people understand what the rationale behind what is, why are you choosing professional development for, what is it, how is it related to your individual development plan, and so that's, as she explained, what the challenges were for this common standard one that still exists. So.
Great. Thank you so much for that description. Sounds like you have a good plan in place with that MOU.
We're hopeful.
May have missed it. How many times does the leadership, is the expectation that the districts and the counties will come to?
Three meetings
three
during
times a
the
year?
year. Yes.
And when do those happen?
One around October, January, and then May, June.
Okay. Thank you. Any of the committee members would like to ask questions, comments? No. That's good news. So this is an action item. Do I have a motion to accept the team's recommendation? I have a movement by Member Fraley, a second by Dr. White. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I do have one question. When will they be coming back to us?
So I'm assuming that it says within 1 year. So
Okay.
I would think that next year around this time.
Yeah, that's why I was asking about the meeting times. I thought, well, let's wait until that last meeting in May happens,
Okay.
and then we could see you again in a year.
Yeah.
All right.
That would be the
Okay.
best. Thank you.
All right,
Thank
nice
you.
work.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I do think I got these. Item 16 is discussion of the bi-monthly report from United States University. This information action item will be presented by Director Terry Clark. Joining the meeting through Zoom. Zoom here?
I've just let them know, so they should be logging on.
Okay. Should we get started? Wait for them.
We can give them a pause.
Okay.
Want me to do item 17 or wait?
I think we wait.
Okay.
We did have that other item to go back to.
We need to do that.
Did you do
I wouldn't do that right now because I would like to spend a little bit of time on that item.
There's also item 8, late document.
Oh, 8, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We could do item 8. 8 is faster than the one. Okay.
You want to do that?
Yeah.
All right.
Melissa, are you okay with that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So we can go back to item 8 while
All
we're
right.
waiting for these guys to come on. Is that okay with you,
Great.
Terry?
Yep.
All right, item 8 is discussion of late documents. Analyst Melissa Dean, are you ready? I'm
trying to watch this too.
I know she's
Right?
doing both.
Multitasking. We'll present this action item. Does anyone need to recuse themselves? All right, Ms. Dean, will you begin?
Okay, so item 8 is the notification to the COA of late documents. As you'll see, the table provided will give you information about late items, including, we have a lot actually this time. We have program review, preconditions, common standards, the multiple single subject preliminary standards, transition plans, and teacher induction transition plans. So all of those are laid out for you on here. You'll see that some of them were received since they were late, but some of them are still outstanding. And staff will continue to follow up with those items that are outstanding.
Okay, any questions from the committee? Anything, Dan? I believe this is actually a information item. It says action item on my script, but Terry?
I was going to give you a little bit of additional context, and it's kind of foreshadowing to one of the items Lynette's going to do in a little bit. Because right now, for none of these issues is the commission allowed to charge an extraordinary fee? We kind of made a little error when we put our regulations together the first time we did extraordinary fees, and we linked it to specifically late biennial reports and late program assessment. But the regulations that are going in the process now, and they went to the commission in the June meeting, it says anytime there is a late document, when something is due and it is late. So the program review, the program assessment and the biennial reports started to come in on time when there was that fee, and so we're kind of assuming that once the new regulations go into effect, we think more people will meet their timelines because they know that that's going to be important.
All right.
Member Erickson.
Yeah, Member Erickson?
It is just a bit worrisome that some of the institutions on this list are institutions that have had difficulties in meeting standards or getting documents in on time. So I thank you for putting that in front of the commission, because I think that as we move forward, that's very important to think about our sister institutions that are having difficulty over a period of years getting things in.
And I'd like to acknowledge Melissa. She's ultra organized, and just keeping track. All of these documents came in, and you can multiply that by however many were supposed to come in, and just keeping track of all the moving parts between Terry and Melissa, and just keeping track of what's in and what they were supposed to have submitted, and whether they're on track. It's a pretty monumental task. So.
Yep. All right. I believe this is an information item. Can you confirm, even though it says?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Melissa. All right. Are we ready for?
I think we're ready, and hopefully they'll be on in a minute. We can start. Yeah, I don't see any more numbers there.
You guys are doing good. This morning was so packed.
Is this a good?
Have a little breathing room.
Special
We have
set.
breathing
Right.
room now.
Yes, you wanted a full meeting?
I want the full experience.
Cheryl, is this a good time for me to mention the annual accreditation fees?
I
Or
think,
not?
are they ready? Oh,
I don't see them there.
okay. Yeah, go ahead and mention it. This should have been in the staff report.
Yeah, I neglected to say that this is the time of year again when annual accreditation fee invoices are being prepared. So there was a PSDE news blurb in there, it's been running for a couple months now, a couple weeks now, and we're asking that you just check your contact information. We're updating all the contacts. And then we're also figuring all the fees. So those fees will be posted, we hope, July 10th, Monday, July 10th, on the fees webpage. And we'll send out a PSDE news blurb about that. And if you can go in and check and remind anyone you see to go in and check the fees and just ensure that they don't look completely off or different or whatever, and let us know. And we'll be running the invoices and sending them out by July 31st.
And it's one of the reasons why item 6 was so large this time, and
Yes.
will be this time every year, because institutions are cleaning up which programs they're not offering so that they don't have to pay. So that's why it was one of the reasons why it was huge.
Well, looks like we have
We have
United
Dr.
States.
Archer with us.
All right. And Marco Curio, will he be joining us?
He's planning to. That is Dr. Archer there. I'm still looking for Dr. Newman.
It's not
and-
Marco?
No, Mr. Curio's not there yet.
Okay.
Elizabeth, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Good. Okay.
Oh, she's really low.
I will start the item. So the United States University hosted a site visit in the 15-16 year, and then had a revisit in the 16-17 year. And that revisit came to you at your March meeting, and you placed some stipulations on United States University. Paula Jacobs has been the consultant with them, but because she's in the process of retiring, lucky Paula, Terry Clark has become the consultant for this institution. And so I have been working with Dr. Archer, Dr. Newman, and Mr. Curio on a monthly basis. We have communications. We have set the date for the revisit in September of 2017. We have a team lead set up and ready to go. This is the first of 2 bi-monthly reports, and this really lays out their planning. And this is what they've done and thought about since your March commission meeting, COA meeting. And then at the August update, which we'll have it as an in folder because it's due August 1st and your meeting's the 7th. They're going to be able to provide more information as to what is the data they've done and what have they collected and what have they analyzed. So this really has a lot of the planning, and they're able to speak to how this is working for them. And actually, we've had some good conversations of how this process of understanding what a unit assessment system is actually driving the institution too in general. So they're coordinating all of this work with their institutional processes. So that's pretty exciting. So I'm not going to go over the report in depth, but I do think that if you look at the bottom of page 5, the system that collects, aggregates, and utilizes data related to unit operations. That's what was really missing. The candidate work was fine at that point when the revisit took place, but the unit operations. So we've had some good conversations about the things in the common standards that need to have data collected on, analyzed, and used. And they have put together this plan that they now have to implement, as is always the case with this. It takes a while to get it implemented. That's my report.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Clark. Would Dr. Archer or
Dr. Newman
like to make a comment?
I prepared them if you had any questions about the update.
Okay,
They
sure.
would respond to the questions.
Does the Committee on Accreditation members have any questions or comments? Member Erickson?
I'd just like to say that it looks like the plan is fairly complete. They have a lot of data to collect, particularly as Mrs. Clark noted in the
Unit
operations piece. And so I'd just like to thank you for your work.
I had one question. On page 9, there was a note that the faculty intend to take the purpose, scalability, and efficacy of this assessment at its June 2017 faculty meeting for possible elimination. Did that happen, and what was the outcome?
Yeah, we held our. I'm sorry. Actually, could you point to page 9 where it is?
It's page 9, Jennifer. It has to do with the end of course TPE assessment. It's in the row that starts on page 8.
Item C, I guess, 3C.
And this might be something Marco's more conversant with. I'm not sure because I believe he's the program coordinator.
Yes, I just need to find this. It's 3.
It's page 9.
Page 8.
Starts on page 8, and then the note about removing the assessment is on page 9.
That's because it's because our pages aren't numbered. I'm looking at.
Right.
Oh, yes, it's always important to use the same version the COA members have. This is in part 3. It's in letter C, your end of course TPE assessment.
Right. So your question has to do with the paragraph that says it should be noted that the faculty intend to take up the purpose, blah, 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 June 17 faculty meeting for possible elimination.
Correct.
Yeah, we did discuss this. We did not decide to eliminate it at this time. Well, the faculty, I should say. What we are doing is we needed to gather an additional piece of information from the faculty that we felt was missing. And so that we have sent that out to our faculty, and we are expecting them to return that information over the next week or so.
Okay, thank you so much.
Marco had some.
No, it got answered.
Oh, okay.
Anybody else?
Oh, and just to add to that there had been some work. That document was deemed very busy, and that's kind of why we were taking that up. And so one of the faculty members started work on streamlining that document, so that was part of the discussion as well.
Terrific. Thank you for that clarification. This is an action item, however, no action is required at this time. If everyone's good for the order, we'll say thank you so much to United States University and Ms. Clark, and move on to our next action item.
Thanks much,
All right.
team.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much for having us.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.
All right. That moves us to item 17 is the summary of technical assistance activities in 2016-17. Administrator Catherine Carney will present this information item. I got exhausted just reading it.
So did we.
You have been busy. Dr. Carney, will you begin, please?
Yes, thank you. We have been busy. I want to first say that I'm sitting here giving you the summary, but there is not a single person in PSD who was not involved in this effort. Everyone, our travel team made sure that people got to the right place at the right time and processed a lot of travel claims. The professional staff, every single member of the professional staff was involved in making this happen. As you know, last year, or this year still, the commission granted a transition year. After numerous changes to the accreditation system as a result of strengthening and streamlining effort, which included the adoption of new standards, change to the accreditation cycle itself, implementing dashboards, redesigning our performance assessments, and then building an annual accreditation system. I might not have hit everything, but I hit like some big highlights. That all of that work, had institutions not been able to successfully implement it, would have stayed at the theoretical level. So by having this transition year, what it allowed institutions to do was have the time to implement with the guidance of commission staff. And what we've heard is that that has made a world of difference to them. In terms of numbers, about, and I have to say about because when we did big presentations at conferences, we did not take attendance, but about 2,000 institutional reps participated in one or more activities. This is not a unique count. There are institutions, especially smaller institutions where people wear many hats, where they would go to one thing and then they would know they would have to be at the next thing and then they would have to be at the next thing. So often they did a lot of traveling as well. And by our best estimate, 250 of our 261 institutions participated.
Nice.
With one or more of the technical assistance activities. This also would not have been possible had many of you who are sitting in the room, as well as others, not been willing to open up your institutions and say, sure, we'll host, come here. One of our goals was to have these events happen regionally so that travel wasn't the thing that got in the way of people participating. So we really took a three kind of pronged approach. We used technology as well as face-to-face. So we started with posting webcasts, and we required, well, we strongly urged, softly mandated, however you want to look at it, that institutional reps first watch the webcast. We didn't want the face-to-face time to be a stand and deliver. We wanted it to be a time when colleagues could work together, we could answer questions, and they could actually begin to launch the new system. So webcasts, face-to-face meetings, and then we also used Zoom quite a lot. And in fact, just recently, the yellow cohort is the first cohort that's having program review, and the yellow cohort consultant was getting a lot of the same questions. So we posted like 6 options for Zoom meetings, and it was just a Q&A where they could come in with colleagues. We'd have the Zoom open, and I would answer questions about program review. So all of those things, I think came together in a way that helped institutions feel like they that we were part of them. We weren't doing to them, and so that led to an unintended but happy consequence, in that we really felt like we forged new relationships, but we also strengthened old relationships, and we a lot of people email us, but they don't know who we are, and we don't know who they are. So that was a nice offshoot of this. On the other edge of the sword, that means that, wow, there are people. I think I'll email them and call them a lot. So our emails and phone work has gone on up quite a bit, but there's so much new, and being able to help institutions really feel confident that they're doing the right thing, because we really believe that is it's better to be proactive and help people do the right thing than to bring them here in a report and have a stipulation and have to fix things that way. The member or co-chairman Moore already said that if you look at the item, there are numerous tables. Since you have it electronically, most everything is hyperlinked, the webcasts and things, if you want to look at any of those. But we tried to subdivide them by kind of the big topic areas that we described as a reason why we needed technical assistance. And so I'm not going to walk you through all those. I'm happy to answer questions about any of those events, but they're there for your review. I do want to say that the year has come to an end tomorrow. However, the work has not. That launching a major shift is not something that can be accomplished in 1 year by an institution or by staff helping them. So the things that we have launched and that are currently being implemented will begin September 2017. New standards are operational. Programs are up and running. We've started common standards. I talked about that review. We have a site visits coming up. But there are other things that still haven't been launched entirely. So our performance assessments are still in the early stages, and they aren't. The implementation isn't complete. Our annual data submission is still in the building parts, and Terry's going to talk about that more later. So we don't have another year where we kind of cease, except for revisits, we cease most of the activities of accreditation. But we feel like we've developed a way in which to communicate with stakeholders to help them feel like they can do this, and we'll continue to have our cohort mailboxes. We will continue to post webcasts. We will continue to host Zoom meetings. What we won't be able to do is do all the regional meetings that we did before, because we'll be out doing site visits. But we are very, very vigilant that if something comes up, that we are there to provide the kind of assistance that our institutions need. So with that, I'll answer questions. Or unless that's perfect.
Okay, Co-Chair Wong.
So just sort of makes my head spin. So
ours too.
To you all. I was feeling happy about training 200 plus cooperating teachers, and then I talked to a person with the San Juan Teachers Association. She trained 1,000, and then you all did however many millions you did. So it's very, very impressive. I do have a question, and it kind of relates to some of our items from the morning, and then not the next one, but the next one on our agenda.
Mm-hmm.
I remember with the last round of new program standards, program standard or common standard number 2, the program assessment one, unit assessment, I think we all predicted that would be a challenge.
Right.
So what's your crystal ball saying based on what the questions you're getting in technical assistance and where the confusion is? What's on the horizon potentially for us as challenge areas?
So standard 4 is the new standard 2. So standard 4.
Yeah.
However, I think one thing has shifted in that before we had them tell and now we have them show, and we do that's the common standard. And then also in the program review, they're also providing actual evidence. And I think what happens when you have to provide actual evidence in the submission of year 5 and all the prep we've done up to it is that if it creates a culture at the institution where you need to have real evidence. And so I think in preparing, I'm hoping, in preparing for those documents themselves, in some ways that will be a catalyst. I do think that institutions, especially when I think that they're smaller and so it's more informal, that unit assessment can be more of a challenge in the same way that Standard 2 was a challenge, because so much happens with a small faculty and, informally. But we really tried to highlight Standard 4. I think the other one, though, is Standard 5. The program impact standard is brand new. And we really tried during technical assistance to help them understand what it meant, but also to really bring down that affective filter and to have them not think that we're asking for VAM. We're not trying to track student achievement data to a single teacher, to a single program, as has happened in some other states. And so I think in kind of releasing them from that, that has helped. That one of the technical assistants that I can't remember if it's listed here or not, we did more than 90, but I think there's 90 on here. We brought the deans together at Cal Council, and we did an activity really just on Standard 5. And I think that that was helpful because deans got to talk to other deans and then go back and talk to their faculties. I'm hoping. I mean, we don't know really, to tell you the truth, Dr. Wong, until we start seeing what comes in. We're projecting, but I think people feel like they have access to us if they don't understand something. A lot of access.
One more question.
Member Pensaval.
Just one more question about the transition plans. So the transition plans that you've gotten in and you've been able to look at, are they mainly on point? I mean, do they look like programs get it and they're moving forward?
So we shifted in what we expect during transition plans, and we actually, I think that's probably the first thing that's listed. We held, I don't know, many Zoom meetings where people asked questions about transition, and that was for, I think you're talking about multiple single subject.
Yes.
So our transition plans ask for, is this, and we're down to the sentence really, is this going to require no change, minor change, or major change? So the program's telling us. What we do is we looked at all the transition plans, and we have some knowledge of institutions. So if an institution that we expected to see major, major, major said no, none, 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 then we reached out to them. If an institution had a lot of major on there, we reached out to them. If it sort of looked like, okay, the things that we believe are going to require major changes across all institutions, they were major or, maybe a little less than major, but so it was about it making sense to us and about the implementation dates being realistic. We did not require a narrative. And so as programs submit program review, we will know if they were right. We ask them to work on a course matrix, but not to submit it. So the green cohort for their site visit will have that course matrix ready, and then from this point forward, they'll come in program review. So we reached out when we thought there was a problem, but we did not ask programs to rewrite.
And for the green cohort, those teams are going to have the transition plans with them as well, so that if they're listing major, at this point in time, major changes are needed, and they're being provided with a real
quick and dirty summary sheet of the changes that were made, they can kind of compare them and ask questions if they see that something was identified as a major change, but they haven't made any change. So it gives them some guidance to start asking questions, because these transition periods are really, really challenging. And they're challenging for the institutions because they want to get it right. So they're like, what are you going to be looking for? I'm making all these changes because of the standards have changed. And the reviewers want to know, how am I going to know what they made changes? So these changes are making people crazy. But so we're trying to find a good way of, capturing where institutions are given those changes at the given time. So the transition plan will be available for the site visit teams.
All right.
Well, I was just thinking of the transition plan, and it's been really a convenient tool within the institution for me as a unit. Well, I'm not the unit head. Who do I think I am? But delegated.
Give yourself a raise.
I'm the one who does the work. Okay. So that's great. Anyway, so we oversee programs that are operated out of a different place on our campus, and so for them to have to we sign the transition plan, so there we have to see it and then follow up with those benchmarks. And so it's really been, I think, a helpful tool in a way that I hadn't quite predicted in a kind of simple way, which is
good. Right. A to-do list almost.
Yeah. Well, it gives me, this is when I've got to check in with, the director of that program, make sure that those things are moving along.
I'll say the other thing that I think programs are nervous about that we tried to also waylay fears was that we're requiring that everything from this point forward is submitted on their website.
Yeah.
So that we're asking programs to, we've said in year 5, but really with preconditions, I would say start in year 1. Build that accreditation website and keep it alive. And we've given suggestions of easy kind of websites that they can build, but we've really directed them back to the IT departments, or if you had a recent visit, go back to that accreditation website that was built and rework it so that program reviews posted there, common standards are posted there, things for the site visit are posted there, and preconditions. We don't know what will happen with the annual data system 5 years from now, and maybe that will be sophisticated enough that everything can go through that portal. It's not there yet. So, and we're not promising that it ever will be, but we are saying that we're not taking any more linked PDFs. Website only.
Or Google Docs.
We're not taking Google. We're not taking Docs. Only taking now Google Sites.
Yeah,
Google have been really. You don't have to have any technology skill, and you can build a website on Google Sites. So, and there's other ones, but I think that's also something that was really useful to have us there in person saying it's going to be okay.
Great. All right. Well, thank you, and I think I can safely say on behalf of all 250 plus institutions, we appreciate your technical assistance and hard work from you and your team. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The team was great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. Well, this is an information item. No action is necessary at this time. Thank you, Dr. Carney. And that takes us to item 18, is report on proposed changes to cost recovery regulations. Consultant Lynette Roby will present this information item. Ms. Roby, will you begin, please?
Thank you. So as Terry mentioned, during the June Commission meeting, a public hearing was held regarding proposed amendments to the cost recovery fee regulations. Since the original regulations were adopted in September 27, 2013, the Commission, as you know, has been involved in strengthening and streamlining the accreditation process and system, and those efforts have resulted in the need for the revisions in the cost recovery fees because they now need to align to the new accreditation system. So on that note, staff presented proposed revisions during the December Commission meeting, and were directed to begin the December Commission meeting, and were directed to begin the rulemaking process, of which the public hearing was a part. The proposed amendments, just as sort of a brief recap, the proposed amendments to the regulations included, first, revisions to the language. Terry already mentioned a couple of those, but Some of them were replacing the biennial report language with annual data report and program assessment with program review. Those were some of the language pieces that were amended. Additionally, there were several cost recovery fee changes proposed. The fee changes included a new fee of $1,000 to be charged for the review of eligibility requirements for the initial institutional approval. The eligibility requirements are new. They were not originally part of the IIA process, and they are taking significant time to review and by staff. The second thing that was changed was the restructuring of the initial program review fee schedule so that it no longer is based on the number of standards included in the program. This is done because although program standards have been streamlined, as you know, they've been strengthened, and the number of standards no longer really indicates the complexity of that standard, or their complexity. So the proposed regulations do not change the fee amounts, but now they reflect a different type of categorization by type of program and complexity of the standards. And then we also removed the fee for the review of the program assessment. As you recall, there was a fee for more than 3 reviews of program assessment documents, and that has now been replaced with a single review process and has been renamed, obviously, program review. So that amended removal of program assessment fees. These regulations were sent to the Office of Administrative Law, the OAL, for a 45-day waiting period. There were no responses received, but there's one little issue. After the initial regulatory packet went to the OAL, staff discovered that due to a technical error, only half of Chapter 3 of the handbook went into the packet and was submitted. So, and that was the half with the amendments to the cost recovery fees. But since the handbook chapters were originally incorporated into the 2013 cost recovery regulations, they're now considered part of the adopted regulatory language. And so the addition of the second half of the chapter that was missing is considered another amendment to the original notice and does require a 15-day notice to be posted. So after that 15-day notice is posted, any comments received will be replied to, after which a final regulation packet will be prepared and submitted to OAL. And then OAL has 30 working days to conduct a review of the rulemaking record. And if approved, then regulations become effective on one of 4 quarterly dates based on the final regulations and when they are filed with the state. So tentatively, we are anticipating that October 1st might be the projected effective date of these new amendments and the regulations. Long-winded, but that's kind of what happened.
Terrific. Thank you, Lynette. Ms. Roby. Yes, Member Erickson.
So I might have missed this in reading through all of the changes, but the cost recovery fee we just talked about that went up before the commission this last meeting for late documents, was that included in here then? So that's in the part that's out for review right now?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes, and that was tied back to the language change. Mm-hmm. So your biennial reports are now annual data reports, and that was all tied in together. Mm-hmm.
Right. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? It's a lot of work. That was really...
I am not the one that originally put the packet together. That would be, and I want to give kudos to Catherine Polster.
Okay.
So
thank you out there, Catherine, wherever you are. All right. This is an information item, and no action is necessary. Thank you, Ms. Roby. That takes us on to item 19, which is an update on development of the annual data submission system. Director Terry Clark will present this information item. Ms. Clark, will you begin, please?
Yes, I'm hoping that I've pushed this button correctly because I'm trying to get the ClickShare to connect so I can show you on my computer.
Is it already loaded into your
Yes.
Okay.
It has to turn white before I push it, or green?
Wow.
It should be red.
It is red now.
And
I've just
then-
pushed it.
And is it a complete circle yet, or blinking? Oh, here it's coming.
He has
I
to
can see
turn
it
it on
coming.
back there first.
Oh,
And do whatever he has to do.
I'm like, you have a different color palette.
There
than
we
the one
go.
I used. Now you can push it.
There, it's red.
There. Okay.
Oh, is that your password?
You'll notice you can't read it, can you? So, what you are
Quick, very quick.
What you are seeing here is our accreditation data system, the ADS. And as of tomorrow, the contractors are done. They're going to do some more work next year. We have to have more contractors. And I think probably Dr. Forbes is probably the only person that has seen this, if you've had time.
I have. I've logged on.
Have you? Okay, so
right.
what you can do, and what each of you who is at an institution will do, and members of the BIR are also going to use this system, you will create an account down here at the bottom. And when you create an account, all you have to do is enter your first name, your last name, your email, and we ask people to use their work email. Then you make your own password. You register, and then you get an email back to you that says it's ready to go. But what we're going to do is we're going to log in on my account, because I have an account, and so you can kind of see a little bit of what it looks like. It knows who I am, so welcome, Terry.
Oh.
There's a little note right here to the technical advisory group, so it's just, welcome, thanks for creating an account. Dr. Frelly, would you mind if I pulled up Chapman as an institution? There's no data in here. So by putting just a couple letters, you can pull up an institution. So here I have Chapman. And then when you click on Chapman, it's going to tell us a whole bunch of helpful things, such as what cohort it's in, what year we're talking about. They're going to be able to edit information. And then down here, you're going to see all of their commission-approved programs. Now, often some commission-approved programs are not offered in just only one way. So, for example, this multiple subject program down here. If your multiple subject program is offered as both a student teaching program and as an intern program, we have not had that information in the past. Now that I'm in the multiple subject page, I can add a report. And when I go in to add this report, multiple subject is my choice. Then I'm going to have to put some information in. Is this an undergrad or a postgrad program? So those new integrated undergraduate programs, institutions are going to be able to report on their undergraduate integrated program cohort separately. So in this case, I'm going to create a postgrad, and then it's going to be, is it co-teaching, intern, is it a residency, is it basic student teaching? In this case, I'm going to say it's basic student teaching, and we're going to say this one's face-to-face. Then I create it, and this is a report for the multiple subject program for the postgraduate student teaching face-to-face model. If the program is also offered on an online model or an undergraduate, you create one of these for each of those options. So for some programs, you may have 2, 3, 4, or 5 sub-programs. We've never had that information. If you remember a number of years ago when Ms. Hickey was out on an accreditation visit, she came back and had learned that one of the CSUs had 7 ways it delivered its multiple subject program. Mm-hmm. They were different. They had different approaches, but we had no knowledge of that. As staff, we are going to be able to pull reports out. So let's say that the undergraduate is actually a residency and it's a combination approach. You have a separate report. You create your report deck, is kind of what we're calling it, and then when you're ready to do a report, the report is going to come up with the appropriate questions ready to go. If we've done this correctly, because we are in the multiple subject, student teaching, postgraduate, face-to-face. So since this is not interns, we should not be asking about intern master buddy teachers or the intern person, but we should be asking about the ratio of supervisors to student teachers. All programs get asked certain questions, like the length of the program in months, if it's part-time, how long. So this information goes in here and it will create a report for that academic year. We have the ability to set the date for when the academic year reports are due. The institution will be able to send us a message. We'll be able to put a message on the institution's page. And actually really cool, we are going to be able to set up BIR teams in here, and BIR team members are going to have access to the institutions they are assigned to see their data.
That's great.
It's not all done yet. It was middle of this week when the first email went out to my 12-member tag group saying, you can create a login now for this. And in July, an email is going to go out to all 260 sponsors. And they're going to be asked to create accounts. Unit heads are going to be able to authorize people. And if your email matches your institution's, the suffix, you will automatically be connected to that institution. So if you have a chapman.edu email, you're connected to Chapman. But the unit head at each institution can identify 2 special roles in addition to just the faculty staff role. One of them is a security delegate, and that's so when you have a dean who's very busy, which I think most of the UC deans are going to delegate this, you delegate a security delegate who can then approve people for your institution. The dean has to approve people if they don't have a matching email suffix.
Approve them to get into
To connect to your institution, right. The other type of delegate is a program delegate. And the institution, the dean again can set up a program delegate, and the program delegate person is able to submit the report. Because once we have all these reports done and the data's been submitted, only the dean or the program delegate can actually submit the reports to the commission. So when we get here and we have program reports for the multiple subjects, we're in progress. When the reports are finally all done, a faculty member can input information, and you don't have to input it all at once. So say you have some of this information, but you don't have everything. Way at the bottom, you save, and the information that's in there is saved. When you're ready to submit it to your unit head, there are numbers of checks, such as if you told us you had 14 people in this program, you cannot tell us that 13 people left voluntarily and 22 people were counseled out, because that's more than you have enrolled in the program. So there are a number of checks that will happen when you're ready to submit it to your unit head. When all program reports have been submitted to the unit head can then submit them to the commission. If you need them back, you have to ask the commission to unlock them again, and we in essence ship them all back to you, and you work with them, and then you can resubmit them when they're done. We know it's new. Everything comes something new. It's a little challenging, but we are very hopeful. We are going to try to work very supportively with institutions, do some little webcasts on how to do some things to demonstrate it. We have a couple guides that we're still working on. We got it down to a 3-page quick start. We couldn't get the quick start shorter than 3 pages, but I have got it to 3 pages now. We're going to share it with the commissioners. Nope, it's 11-point Calibri font. It is respectable. It is respectable.
With screenshots.
And screenshots in there.
Right. You'll have no problem.
Yeah.
Hey, I could read it. No, I'm not having to record.
So we just kind of wanted to give you a little heads up that this system is coming along, and we are actually really, really excited. You don't get to see this screen that I get to see, which has all the institutions.
No.
All 260 are available to me because I'm a staff member and I have full staff access. When you log in, you will see only your institution. Yep, she says, welcome, Cheryl, and she sees UC San Diego only. If she were not on the COA and we assigned her to a site visit team, she would see that institution also, but she wouldn't be able to modify anything. She'd only be able to view reports. It's really cool. There are dates we can put in, and so we can identify when the person's access drops off from the system. So it's been a lot of work.
It's got a very good
It's-
IT team.
Well, it's challenging because in some ways we don't know everything we need in this system yet because we don't know all the specifics. And so they've had to work with us. And it was really hard because they were not able to actually build it and then have us tested it. We started testing it 6 weeks ago when it wasn't really built. We were flying in this thing and it had no wings and it had no cover on it and we were trying to test it. Now it has wings and it seems to fly at least. So we're pretty excited and we are looking for feedback. So if you see something on here that doesn't make sense to you or you have a suggestion, I would love to hear it because we have the ability. Our tech staff is learning how to do this so that the question list under the staff area, which you don't see all the staff area, we actually can create additional questions. We can add questions right here. We can configure the approval pathway approvals. We can do a lot in this system. It's got a lot of flexibility built into it. And we're hopeful that, so yeah, the master question list is here, and then we have to configure which questions go to which types of programs. But it's pretty fun.
I have 2 questions. Oops, sorry. And one you may have already answered, but Is there an opportunity for an institution to see the questions without logging in, like the master list you have? So if I
Yes.
want to be prepared before I log on?
Yes, although when you log on, you can also go to that page and print it.
Okay, good.
You can print it, but we are going to share with everyone all the questions. Part of the challenge is there's a set of about 35 questions is the universe of questions, and other than length of program, number of units, there's like nothing voluntarily left and canceled out. Other than that, nothing is for every single program. So it's a little weird, but we can definitely give everyone the full list of questions. And it's what was in your COA agenda items. When we did the updates this year on COA, when anyone asks me what's going on here, I send them the February and the March COA items. I say that is the most up-to-date information about this system because everything that's in those items is still accurate.
And the expectation of when institutions will start inputting this data?
We're hoping that this summer and fall, all the accounts get set up, and we are going to do a pilot of data collection this year. We're still kind of thinking, and maybe we can use some feedback from you. Right now, when you go and look at the institutions, it's still set up for the 16-17 year. One idea is to actually have them do logins and passwords, and then actually answer the questions for last year first, just on a pilot basis to kind of just get us a baseline, because we really have a goal to get the data in during the year that's operating. But I was thinking that it might make some sense to say, play around with this. Don't worry if you don't get everything in it, but play around with it with the 16-17 year to practice. So that's kind of what we were thinking through the early fall. And then we'll say, nope, we're ready for 17-18 now. We need you to start putting your 17-18 data in.
Great, thank you. Member
So how are
Erickson
we
and
going to get
Councilor?
in? It'll be a link. Will it be like
we'll send a link out.
Educator preparation here? Or
The
something?
early, the data, the link that's up at the very top of my page that you see there is actually the real link. In fact, I'm happy to send all of you the quick guide today.
Great.
We will send out to you all the quick guide, the quick
Terrific.
start guide.
How fun.
We had to edit it. We're happy to have you go in it because it is our system now. I am going to go in and take out what I did to Chapman. I will remove all that out because this is the live system now.
What?
Yeah, so
But we don't want it shared.
No, we do not want it
because
shared
it's still in
beyond you
development.
yet. In July, your deans will get a communication directly from me with all the information about setting it up.
And I just want to emphasize that in this first year, at least, there's no outcomes data here. I mean, there's very
not.
so, but it is getting the system up and running. So going back to Catherine, I think at some point this morning said we're asking institutions to tell us their data at the site visits because we're not going to have that, unfortunately. So it's a little step back to take a big step forward. Hopefully, we're not going to have that biannual report kind of data or candidate competence data as much as we can. Hopefully, in the future, we'll have it through here in a much better way. So.
Question.
This is the USC page, just so you know.
Okay.
And you actually have there's three kind of tabs here. Required reporting. This lists your active programs. And then over here it lists the programs that are not active. And so we should never be charging you for the non-active programs, obviously. But you actually will be able to compare your listed active programs in this system with your invoice.
That's
The
great.
invoice is posted.
Yeah.
So you'll be able to say, okay, is this appropriate? Am I doing this appropriately?
We do charge for inactive programs, though.
$50. You're right. We have an inactive fee. You're right.
So when you send me the link, will I actually be able to look at that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
When you log in and you get approved for USC, yes, you'll be able to get into your institution.
I had one other question. I can't remember it. Will CTC be loading things on? So it'll be my responsibility, or Kathy's responsibility, to put in the preconditions report and the transition, all that?
Nope, that doesn't need to go in here at this point in time.
Okay.
What you would be submitting, so for the Administrative Services Preliminary Program,
Okay.
you would have, once you decide if you have any additional reports, so you have to add your first report so you can report. So it's Administrative Services.
okay.
It should only be post-grad. Yes. There's no pathway here because you're not approved for an intern program.
Right.
If you were approved for an intern, you'd have an intern option there. And then you would pick which of these. And if you have more than one, you would have more than one report.
So
And
it's
then you would-
tied to what they're already approved to
Yes,
offer.
it is completely tied to what you're actually approved for.
I think one thing that might help for clarification is you're not You're not uploading a report.
Right.
You're responding to a series of questions.
Right.
And so you need to have the,
itself.
yes, you need to have the data. So once you tell the system, I have a post-grad intern program that's delivered face-to-face, and I have a student, online student teaching program that's, what did I leave out? Whatever I left out. Post-grad also. So you have all these things. So maybe for your multiple subject program, you have 5 reports. When you click on that report, a specific set of questions will come up that are specific to the type of delivery model and pathway. And so what you need to have in advance is your data. Now, the good thing is, let's say you get to a question, you're like, I didn't calculate that. Save it, come back to it.
Right.
And I think eventually what we've done in the past is we've sort of, now I'm really speaking out of turn, so you can just slap me down, Terry. But I know when I was running an institution, that it was helpful to me when the commission gave me a place where I could download a printable list of all the possible questions it might ask. And so we've done that in the past. I don't know if you need that this time because you can go in and out of it, but I'm sure we'll help institutions in any way that we can help them.
I'd forgotten that my email was out. I started looking at my email and multitasking. It's like, oh, that was kind of bad. I apologize.
Speaking of slapping down.
Yes, remember Erickson's. So I just signed in. It was really easy. Can't see anything, but I'm on. So that's great. Everything's working. The things that we've just talked about today, late reports, etc. I thought I saw a place maybe for those kinds of things where the reviewers would be seeing that as they look through.
They will get that information, I don't think, from this system at this point in time. So for the admin ends up only with 18 questions. So even though there are 30-some questions in the question bank, the admin programs are only linked to have a certain number of questions. Right now, we're not clear about that yet. We're going to continue to develop this as we go.
Okay.
It's a growing thing.
So what we've heard out in the field is that really as this gets launched, you're going to have to look at how your institution collects data and how you sort data internally so that you're not doing hand calculations to figure out the 50 people that are interns versus the 150 that are student teaching. So we think that this kind of rollout with not as complex of data will allow you to look internally about how you need to parse things up.
It actually could help us with our IT and our IR departments.
Good.
In saying that we
little leverage.
need this. Yeah, exactly.
And there's no limit to how many participants from your institution can be in the system. So for like USC, you may have a completely different person entering data for each of your programs. Then the program delegate or the unit head has to review it all, and then they decide when the reports are ready to come into the commission. So we're hoping it's
like Karen will delegate that to Kathy, and she'll put them in.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's kind of like Title II.
It's a lot like Title
Yeah.
II in that way.
It's like the old NK. Sorry.
About the one program today that had 6 regions.
Yes.
Is that going to come into play there?
You didn't do location.
Yeah, right.
It's going to depend. If they offer the program differently in the places, yes. Part of what we decided, because originally we had 4 things on here. We had the 3 that are in here and location. But when we did a good amount of talking with institutions, a lot of our multi-campus institutions have become much more systematized because of the accreditation system now. And so, for example, at a large multi-campus institution, they say, we have one core course syllabi. That is used for all courses. So in essence, the program that's offered at each place is the same
program.
So we're really trying to figure out where it is truly a different program. If it's different faculty, different candidates, and different coursework, then we're going to have them in here to put in another program. We'll have to figure out how they're going to do that.
I mean, a concern for programs that are away, even if the curriculum is the same, it's different. It's often different faculty different staff.
Mm-hmm.
And so it can be a very different experience depending upon where the students are going.
But you can even use different, like, down the hall, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
That's
and you
the
can even
reality.
have obviously a common syllabus, and then instructor A says,
kind of ignore that.
that's not a signature assignment. I'm going to do something different. You know what I mean?
Right,
And
right.
But that campus
Literally next door to
is,
me.
I'm
Not
thinking
speaking
about the
from experience,
accreditation
right?
visit. That campus gets a good look. I'm wondering about how as programs grow and they're all over the place,
Right.
how do we know what's happening? with-
So I think some of that we might get in other ways, but we just grappled with the idea of location and what that means in today's world versus.
Iris, can you put the microphone towards you? Thanks.
So I think for sure we're going to have to get a good sense of that at the site visit. Our team leads are going to have to talk it through with the institution to really understand. We may not be able to cut the data yet because we haven't quite defined it the same for everybody yet. So we'll keep working on that and maybe bring it back here over time.
And we did not include location as one of the sorting mechanisms on this annual data system.
That's what I said. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we couldn't come to some sort of understanding of how we would communicate that to the field because everybody's doing it a little bit different.
So Terry, you mentioned that the unit lead looks at it before it's submitted, and I guess I want to highlight how important that is because somebody on your campus who you've designated to do it could open it and leave things zeros. And so it's really important to look at it.
Yeah.
We don't have a way to prevent that.
Turn off this one.
Okay, thank you. That's
great.
That's exciting work.
So exciting.
Very exciting.
Obviously, that was an information item, and no action is necessary at this time, except we will look forward to getting that link and logging on and trying it ourselves. So thank you, Ms. Clark, and your team. And I look forward to, you're going to renew that contract with those guys? Is that what you said?
We're going to have someone to help us, yes.
Yeah. All right. Item 20 is discussion of clarification from the Commission on preliminary multiple subject, single subject fieldwork expectations, and consultant Jake Schuler has been anxiously sitting there waiting to start us off on this agenda item.
Ready to
Mr.
go.
Schuler, will you begin, please?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so as you mentioned, this item is an update to the COA on the discussions that the Commission has had regarding requirements for fieldwork and clinical practice. We had two items, one in April and one in June that Cheryl and Terry and I all presented on. And you asked earlier about questions that had been coming from the field on confusion with the new standards, questions that came during technical assistance, through email, and a lot of those have been around what are the requirements for fieldwork and clinical practice, especially with the more specific requirements for multiple and single subject credentials. So questions from the field, as well as the fact that, as we stated earlier, in October, site visits will begin for this cycle, and then in January of 2018, we'll start doing training for new BIR members. So we want to make sure that we understand the requirements and the guidance around those the fieldwork requirements. So in the goal, as Cheryl has stated, the goal here was where the standards have been vague, where it doesn't say exactly what's required, that we wanted the Commission to tell us if there was some specificity they could give us. And then in areas where things were very specific, right, so there's areas where they talk about hours per week or visits with a supervisor per semester, we wanted to know where are there levels of flexibility for if programs need to do it in a different way. So to start with the April meeting, and if you look on page 3, there's 5 points. So page 3 of the attachment, there's 5 points that I summarized the April discussion. So the first one is that Common Standard 3 requires that all educator preparation programs at all institutions include some level of fieldwork. There are there are program standards that do not include specific language on fieldwork. So they're not specifically in the program standards. So the first question was to the commission, does Common Standard 3 supersede that and say, even if it's not in your program standards, do all programs require it at some level? And they said yes. So they also emphasized, though, that they want to make sure programs can meet those standards in a way that's flexible to them. So that was number one. Number two, the statement that all candidates need to be properly supervised until they have completed all credential requirements and are fully licensed. So the chair had talked about, Chair Darling-Hammond had talked about the guarantee to the public that all students are under the care of fully licensed educators. And so the idea here is that while you're working towards your license, you should have proper guidance and supervision throughout that. Number three was recognizing the significant role that TK-12 partners, school sites, and staff, the significant role that they play in educator preparation, and understanding that there are a lot of things on their plate and that there are not currently a high level of incentives for teachers to take on student teachers, and that it's a high level of responsibility, and that we should develop and continue thinking about additional supports for them to be able to fulfill that part of educator preparation. The fourth idea that came up in April was further formal research, and the IHEs talked to us about their abilities to help out with further formal research into the benefits of clinical practice and fieldwork. And the fifth one was organizing a symposium to gather all partners, so candidates, districts, government agencies, and programs, to make sure that everyone can come together to talk about the vision for education, educator preparation going forward, and also to identify high leverage practices around fieldwork. So those were the areas that they talked about in April. Now, when we came back in June, we focused on some guidance language in 8 different areas, specifically for multiple and single subject, and around Program Standard 3, which lays that out. So if you were to look on page 5, that's where I'm going to start talking about those 8 items.
5 or 3?
It's 3 on ours.
Let's see.
It's 3 on ours.
1, 2,
Well,
3.
it's 3 in the document.
Yeah, it's where you see the italics.
I see. Okay, got it. I see what you're saying.
Okay. Okay, so and one thing to emphasize beforehand is that these were areas of guidance that came up, but there wasn't any mention from the commission that any of the language in the standards itself should change. So the standard language is fine. The reason for this guidance is, as I said earlier, where it's somewhat vague to provide some specificity, but also where it's specific. And the commission mentioned several times that that if an institution needs to meet the standard in a different way, as long as they meet the goal and intent of that standard, there may be some derivation in those numbers. So they may not meet exactly the numbers that are listed in the standard, but it will be on the onus, it'll be the onus of that institution or program to show the COA and the accreditation team how they're still meeting the goal and intent of the standard. So the first one, as you see here, it says clinical practice is a developmental and sequential set of activities. There wasn't significant discussion from the commission on this. The idea with this is that as a new person in fieldwork, as a new teacher, as a new person in that setting, that you should be starting with early field experience that starts with observation, co-planning, and then slowly moving into more responsibility. So that was the intent they had sort of laid out in April, and they stuck with that. For number 2, this was specifically what activities are going to count within the 600 hours. This is also where Chair Darling-Hammond introduced another term, because we've often had varying terms here. We have clinical practice, we have fieldwork, A term that she began to use during the meeting was clinical supervision, to make sure that the understanding is that the 600 hours is always going to include hours where you're working with a veteran teacher or with a veteran educator, and you're under their guidance or supervision. So hours that are under that would be within the 600 hours, but hours spent solo lesson planning or things like chaperoning dances or after-school activities, that would not count for the 600 hours. So that's where the discussion landed with that. For the third item, this was specifically on another part where we've gotten a lot of questions, which is on the 4 weeks of solo or co-teaching experience. So one of the questions was, does the 4 weeks have to be contiguous? Does it have to be all 4 weeks straight through? Or can it be broken up 1, 1, 1, 1, or 2 and 2? So there were some questions about that. And then what had to happen, what sort of experiences did the candidate need to have during that 4 weeks? So the chair and other commissioners described what they called basically an arc of instruction. So starting from lesson planning to then delivering the lessons that you've planned, to monitoring student achievement towards the goals in your plan, to assessment, and then to reflection, and making adjustment based on your results. So they wanted to make sure it was emphasized that it was not just coming in and teaching a lesson here, a lesson there. They wanted to make sure that the candidate actually saw the full cycle of instruction and could experience that. So getting back to that idea of meeting the standard in a different way, if it is 2 weeks in one experience, maybe in the first student teaching placement, and 2 weeks in the next, that would probably be okay, but it would be on the onus of the institution to show how they're meeting the standard. Okay, the fourth item was related to the expectation for interns and their fieldwork experiences. The line in the standard is, for interns, early field experience would take place in an experienced mentor's classroom. So the commission did not have significant additional comments on this item. The discussion centered around interns being able to spend time with veteran teachers as they begin to teach. So it would be early and ongoing experiences, observing and working with veteran teachers. The fifth item is related to when private school candidates, the requirement that they complete 150 hours in a diverse school setting. So you'll see that there's a number of items that go from page 4 to 5 that lay out some parameters as to what it would look like to have a diverse experience. So the chair and commissioners, they supported the language here, and several of them noted the importance, both in their own training and in the training for other candidates that they've worked with, how beneficial it is to have a variety of school settings and student populations before licensure. So there were no other edits or changes to the guidance that we brought up there. Okay. The sixth item. So this is for program supervision. Right now, the standard says, and it will continue to say, right, 4 times per quarter and 6 times per semester. But this was back to that concept of if those numbers are not exactly where they are. So, for example, if a program said, at the beginning of the time in fieldwork, they're going to have 8 observations per semester, but then in the second year or in the latter part of experience, it might be 4. So again, it's on the onus of the program that if these numbers would not be exactly the way that they're going to do this, the language is fine in the standard, but it would be up to them to show the team that and the COA that they're still meeting the goal and intent of the standard, which is to make sure that that candidate is supported throughout the entire experience. So we don't want it all front-loaded and then nothing the last semester or the last year. I want to make sure that it's throughout the entire experience. Okay, the seventh item, similar thing with the hours. So it states that it's 5 hours per week, and if a program is doing that in a different way, it would be on them to show how they're still continuing to support through the requirements through the district supervisor. Okay, for the last item, this wasn't discussed really at all. It just came up once about the requirement that the supervision, that it's either an in-person site visit or that it's videotaped and archived. So what the commission saw as the goal of this part of the standard was that candidates are receiving feedback that's tied to the TPEs. So it's not just that they come in or that it's so we want to make sure that there's a real record of it and that there's a chance for feedback and discussion based on the performance. That's my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Terry. Or additions.
Well, I was just going to say that one of the reasons why we needed to put this together is, one, we've been out in the field for technical assistance. We're getting asked, by every institution that has just a slightly different take on the standards, for some clarification. This is what we're doing. Does this meet the letter of the standards? So it was really hard when the standards went to very specific things like 5 hours per week, to answer them. Well, it's really clear. It says 5 hours per week, and we were getting some pushback. So we thought, we really need to ask the commission, did they really, really mean 5 hours per week and no flexibility, or is there flexibility? And I think what was really helpful in the conversation, a few things, was Linda clarifying that really what she's thinking is about clinical supervision, and that term, not so much the candidate practicing, but that they're practicing with that support structure around them, whether it's the program faculty members or whether it's the master teacher. So to keep that in mind. And then Tina Sloan from UC Santa Barbara was really helpful in helping us think about if there is some flexibility, and the commission seemed to think that there could be, the onus would be on the institution to demonstrate why they're doing it the way they're doing it, and that it still really addresses the needs of the candidates, is that, so the site visit team would have to really consider, you're not doing it 5 hours a week, you have this other model, why is that workable? How is that meeting the needs? So Tina basically said, we have to go back to what was the goal in drafting this. So it's going to be a little, as we shore up the teams and as we get them ready for site visits, not everybody's comfortable in a little bit flexible place. They want to see, clear language, but I think it's going to be really important, at least for our team leads especially, to understand where the commission said there's a little bit of flexibility and where they said no, we really need it tightened. So I don't know if there's anything more you want to add to that, Terry.
What I really wanted to add is we really see that this guidance on the standards is your purview.
Right.
You you are educators, you know a lot about this. But we took it to the commission to get that feeling and the guidance from them. And so I think now what we're ready to do is really write some guidance documents. And we had some frequently asked questions we were working on before, and we're going to get those done now.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of input we have here. And we also have Commissioner Rodriguez with us, who was at the meeting and heard the conversation. So we just really like to hear your input and then your guidance as we move forward with developing this guidance for the field.
We also wanted to make sure you all heard that conversation, and you might want to listen to it if you have time, if you haven't heard it personally, because you're going to make the accreditation decisions come next spring or next fall, so that you are on the same page with the commission. So,
yeah. All right, Member Forbes.
So one of the questions that's come up where I work, and also I've heard it when I've attended technical assistance, is because of the emphasis now on outcomes and the idea of data, yearly data submission and data dashboards and so forth, is how would this be monitored and when? Is it at the site visit that you produce the audit documentation? Is it something that we would, as in the biennial reports, once the intern preconditions were changed and we included that in the biennial reports, like how many hours the interns receive supervision and so forth. So I think those are some of the clarifications that will maybe help people relax a little bit about. I think some are foreseeing, right now, oh my goodness, I've got to turn in a spreadsheet every quarter to somebody who's going to,
Well, and I think some of that work is still on your plate now for the next couple of meetings. For instance, the surveys that Terry's kind of been primarily focused on the surveys. we'll have a schedule of when those come out and when they get distributed, and for lack of a better term, how we're going to distribute it and how to incorporate it in the site visits we've already talked about. I think one of the things that would be helpful, I think, is to put some of that data in the report itself that goes to you, so that you can say, especially if an institution, we didn't have to talk to a lot of program completers because their survey data was really high response rate and very positive.
Very positive.
But you don't want to know that that's a forgotten piece, that we actually should quote that in some manner in the report. So there's a lot of work, I think, on surveys and the data still to be done.
So, just to finish it off, so we really started collecting this data because I had two wonderful GSRs who could continue to bug the students if they didn't answer, but they turned it in every week, and it was really quite instructive for us to see the variation in what they were reporting. First of all, what showed up to them as clinical practice, right? And so we had one that reported like 30 hours, and somebody else had 200, and they're both they're supposed to be in the same place, kind of thing, And so this, the person who didn't report very much was in a early childhood classroom where, first of all, are they really getting enough practice? We'll have to see. And secondly, do they recognize as instructional some of the kinds of interactions they're having with kids? And so right away, our faculty started to think more about that and make it more explicit and help the students frame their student teachers frame their practice in a different way. But it's been very, actually really useful to collect that.
Good.
Yeah.
Coach Hong.
So I have a couple different questions and maybe just like a suggestion. So on item, let's see, it's just sorry. Program standard 3, number 2, clinical practice must consist of.
What page?
Number 3.
Page
of the
3, I
Of
think.
the commission item.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I just,
Oh, gotcha.
and I think I'm not hearing the message about like the wiggle room. So sorry if I'm not doing that. But I worry about the word supervisor, because like in some of our worlds, a supervisor is a particular role, although the instructional faculty, which includes the field supervisor, right? That like we can use that term to include lots of different people who interact with the candidates, may also accompany, guide, mentor, and informally supervise some of these hours of clinical practice. So anyhow, I just worry a little bit about some of the language and how it may feel outside of the operational context, that it's very open, but we use like terms interchangeably, and in some instances they mean very, very specific things.
Do you think that fourth line down, under the guidance and supervision of a master teacher, veteran practitioner, and/or course instructor, we tried to make it as broad there to say.
And then below it reverts back to not so many options.
Okay, so
should we
that
change
later
that program supervisor to?
It may include all instructional hours in which a veteran practitioner or program supervisor is present.
Perfect. We can broaden that.
Hung up on that.
We can broaden that also.
And then the other thing, I'm just trying to, so it was sort of, I think Cheryl started to answer my question. I'm trying to figure out under the 5 hour, so item 7, page, I don't know what page this is, 6?
Yep.
So what's the evidence that communicates that number 7 is being done? So is it weekly logs? Is it we train them on co-teaching and we check in and everybody says they're doing it, and so and nobody says that somebody's handed them the keys and walked out of the classroom? I mean, I'm just wondering about the level of documentation
We were
for that.
We were too, and that was one reason why we included that in part of the survey for the student teachers, because the interns were already having to answer that question, like how often did you see your support provider?
Right.
They do the so the student teachers were logging the same thing, but it's not sustainable to me. It's not necessarily the best use of our time or theirs. It did cause them to think about and maybe appreciate some of the ways they were being supported that they hadn't thought of, because they had little check boxes they could fill in to sort of let them think about what that might look like.
Right.
But I'm curious about what other ways we could document this if we're going to be looking at evidence as opposed to just narratives of say we do.
Member Pencil.
Oh, I was just thinking about the last one, number 8. And so it says that these need to be archived. So are we talking about how many cycles of archived data? So if we look at a site visit, usually we want at least 3 cycles of archived data, 3 years. Is that about right?
It's plenty, yeah.
Okay.
The archived idea, I explained this to the commissioners. It used to be, often there would be some supervisor maybe who would go out and say, darling, that was so great. And that was about it. So the whole purpose, in my view, the language that's italicized is the standard, like it must be archived. I think that is that there's data that I now talk about with the candidate. That is my understanding of archived. I don't think it has to be saved for years and years and years, but there has to be some documentation, some evidence from that observation that is used by the program. The other thing I would say about evidence here is, and going back to like this other one about the 5 hours per week, we're not going to check that in all institutions. Where we're going to be checking that is where there's input that says the candidates are unhappy, that they don't feel supported.
Right.
So it's not like every single institution has to have a chart for every single candidate, because if your candidates are saying, yes, we got lots of support and guidance for our master teachers, we're not going to be looking for this information. So clearly you have a way at your institution where you had them do some recordings, that you got some information, and you're going to be able to provide that as evidence. This is what we expect. They understand the expectations. We collected data that we did know they were doing it. That's good. Yeah, Catherine.
So my ears perked up on something that you just said, and I want to make sure that it doesn't translate to program review being at an issue. So Terry just said, we're not going to look for every 5 hours unless there's an issue.
However, program review.
However, you are expected to document when and what the duration is and the frequency of your candidates being supervised. And so
By whom?
I think
by whom?
by the program.
Okay, but sorry to interrupt.
So there's actually 2 things in program review. There's a requirement regarding supervision from the program, and there's a requirement that you're documenting time with a mentor. Okay, so and mentor has like some parentheses after, like here's all the ways, master teacher, blah 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 blah. So and I don't have those. I didn't pull up the directions, but what I'm saying is, even if you're an exquisite program, you're the best program in California, you should still have a record of when that's happening, because your reviewers are going to use that to make a decision about alignment prior to the site visit. I know that's not what you meant, Terry.
No, but so during program review, when they have to provide the candidate handbook, the master teacher handbook,
right?
Those policies that are in those handbooks are going to be, they're part of the information that the team is going to use. And so that is a good big part of it. And then at the visit, if there's any information where they're hearing, no, we weren't getting supported, then they're going to really talk to your candidates in depth. And that's where if you don't have some support that shows you've actually done what your policy says, it's not going to work out well.
So I think, there's probably nothing that can be done about this, but I think part of my issue, I feel like there's mixed forces at work here. So on the one hand, co-teach and collaborate and work with your district partners and all this other stuff. And on the other hand, we've separated out these 2 roles because they exist, but it's like, I feel like there's something underlying in here with these 5 hours that first of all, I think it's going to be I think we're going to spend a lot of time on documentation that could have been spent on something else, honestly. And I do think it doesn't send the right message to us, or it's not the same message we have been sending to ourselves about how districts and programs can collaborate. So to me, it reinforces these silos, that your university person is going to come out 6 times, and your school-based person is going to do 5 hours, and there's not enough trying to get us to sort of mix some of those things up. I don't know. That's my reaction.
I understand that view. I think the 600 hours is all of it. The 600 hours is both your district employee supervisor and your programmatic supervisor. That's the 600 hours of work, because you have to be doing this work with an experienced educator for 600 hours. I think here at the 5 hours,
600 hours can only occur in a school site. You're not, right? I mean, you're not doing practical experience at the university classroom.
But they can include the early observation because the faculty member is supervising that
No, I think
placement.
you're mixing.
Okay.
I wasn't clear. I'm not, the 600 hours, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the 5 hours of interaction with your master teacher a
and
week.
I think the reason that five hours per week is in there is because we all have that story of the person whose master teacher goes in and reads the newspaper the entire time they're in that person's classroom. And it's the same program where the university supervisor doesn't go out very often. So this here, I don't think it has to all be documented. I think I don't think it's, the intent here is that it has to be documented on a weekly basis. I think there's an ability to say, this is how our program works, and your candidates would be able to articulate that I'm spending 20 hours a week with my master teacher. That's how it works.
Right.
So we're establishing minimum and norms.
Yeah. Right.
So is the 5 hours only, I mean, to me it was, I'm confused about, is it only in the student teaching part, or it is only in the student teaching part?
Well, how is student teacher defined?
No. It's in clinical practice.
Their field experience or
But if you have, like that one program was part-time today, and then they're spread over such a long period of time.
That is exactly the question. Right. So can an institution play with those 5 hours to address? They have to make the case that they're addressing the needs of those candidates. If it's a 2-year program, if it's a 1-year, part of what we heard, and Katie, you can jump in because I know you've heard this probably more than any staff member. Well, our program is a lot longer than most programs, so it's costing us more to give candidates that level of support over that period of time than somebody who has a 1-year program. So it's really not fair. I mean, and there's lots of examples like that. And we said, if you have those candidates and they're in your program, you need to support them. And, I don't know, Katie, if you want to just jump in.
What I've tried to tell them is that, the onus is on you to prove that you are truly supporting your candidates. And if the site visit team comes and the candidates say we were not supported, and you say, oh, yeah, but we really did support them, there's a problem. And so make sure that you are doing what needs to be done. And the district employed supervisors, which is what we're trying to call master teachers now, the district employed supervisors, and that 5 hours, if you could clarify, and I don't know if you want to do it here, but the question I'm getting now is that 5 hours part of the 600, or is it not? Is it a separate piece?
They're apples and oranges.
And it's it's not. It depends. I think I know the answer. It depends on what they do during those 5 hours, whether it counts in the 600.
Right.
Right? I mean, Terry or Cheryl?
Yeah. I think most of the time when you work with your district employed supervisor, I think I want to go back to this early field work thing. Right. I don't think you have a district employed supervisor when you're doing early observations.
You don't. No. Right. That's the point I was trying to, and I think I did confuse you, but the 600 hours includes that early field work. Right. However, if you're out observing, it can't be I picked my location. Right. It has to be that it's under the supervision of the program in saying go here. Right.
Of course,
yes, of course, that's what I meant by program. Yeah, but I think one of the things that might help that I heard at the commission meeting, not this exact word, but I heard this flexibility of the institution. So average wasn't called out, but I think average was the implied concept.
Yeah,
so that if you determine that the best thing for your candidates is they get 20 hours. In the beginning days of when they're first out in a classroom, and then it wanes towards the end.
Right.
And maybe, they're not going to be in there 5 hours in a purposeful way. You could choose that they're not going to be there for 5 hours every single week, but it's the design of your program. So I felt like the commission was trying to give flexibility to that 5 hours. I looked over at Hadea, but she's gone.
I I'm not, if it's really student teaching or
Yeah.
student teaching, I'm not seeing it as an issue. I'm coming back to what you said, Pia, and then how Terry responded. So I'm just feeling like I'm a supervisor, and I don't see it happening that this doesn't happen. It's there, and so I like the fact that it's been written down minimally 5 hours. It's really helpful to us to be able to say that to the teachers and quantify, but most of them are doing way more than that.
Right. Some programs define student teacher maybe differently than how you define student teaching. That's part of the problem.
They're just they're not in the schools very much.
Well, just what different programs call the student teaching event different things. So there's all varieties of where field work comes in. So we can't say it's for student teaching, because in some programs, student teaching is your your 4 weeks of solo. That's your student teaching. And so what's all that other stuff? They call it something different. So we have to, that's why I think when Terry talks about a guidance document, that's really useful, because it can help, regardless of what verbiage you're using in your program to describe, it can help you get to the same level of service for your students, for your candidates.
So you're saying that it could include field work, 5 hours?
It depends on how people define field work. That's the problem, is that in some cases it might, and in other cases it wouldn't be appropriate. So that's one of the things staff is struggling with, is to make clear, and that's why even at the table, Linda's saying, well, it could be clinical supervision, or it can be clinical, like different commissioners have come up with even different ways of calling this out, and so that's what we're working on still. Because when you say, well, does that include field work, I don't know your definition of field work, and I don't know if it's the same as USC's definition of field work.
What was heartening about the conversation, I'm sorry, is that they left the professional judgment to you all around the table here. I was heartened by that, actually, and to the site visit team. So that helped me. That's my big takeaway.
So because it becomes the institution's responsibility to then state a case as to why it does meet those.
Yes.
Right.
Member Co-Chair Wong.
So I think it would be helpful in the guidance document to, and I think this was sort of part of your presentation, just to kind of reiterate, maybe in no uncertain terms, like the intent here is that no candidate be left alone on their own to try to figure things out.
Right.
And then in order to get at this intent, these are some things that have to be in place. I think that would help communicate to us that if we can reach that intent, because it's not, obviously I'm stuck on this issue, but I think when I read it, I get stuck on the 5 hours and trying to figure out how will that get documented.
Will the commission be coming back to us with some more information on that?
No, this is not going back to the commission as far as our plan, at least. I think our plan is to actually have a draft guidance document for you on August 7th for you to have reviewed ahead of time, and we'll have it ready to go.
I'll be here. Call. Give me a call. All right.
I want to slow things down. Just one quick question on page 3C-4 under item 5. It talks about diverse school settings. One thing that came up when I was working with the TPAs is, does that include students who are exceeding above and beyond what is the normal school setting? Is there any allowance that's in the language that maybe in somewhere else in some of the documents of the CTC that allows for that? Maybe the students in a cognitive level that are either higher performing or poor performing? And does the disability as it's listed there include both cognitive and psychomotor? Or is that just generally understood? And I don't want to open a
Good
whole
question.
can of worms.
Yeah, let us look into that.
Yeah,
I know that the new standards or the TPEs talk about gifted students,
Right.
but I'm not. I haven't
in
remember what
LCAP
exactly.
language is exceptional needs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Students with exceptional needs.
That's
Right.
right.
Range.
Yeah,
I
the
think
full
we could
range.
broaden it to that. I think you're right.
Good call.
And we do define all.
Right.
Could I bring up one more thing? If you're going to do a guidance
Manual. So, there are models like Megan Frankie at UCLA where they do a lot of rehearsal in the classroom and student teachers teach other student teachers.
Right.
And that can be very valuable. I think Deborah Ball does that too or something. But, that's something that should be distinguished too, because I think a lot of programs are working towards that when they're having longer programs or they have the time to do it. Like, we're an example of that. We have the time to do it now. We're going to be doing more of it. I don't know if it counts or not.
I think we had some conversations. I'm trying to think who with, because it's a long, but teachers or prospective teachers teaching other teachers was not in the 600 hours.
Okay, that's right. Okay.
Within the classroom, yeah.
Thank you.
Has to have K-12 students.
Yeah.
K-12. Okay.
Yeah.
Or TK-12.
Iris has something, I think.
Okay. Just back to documentation related. So now I'm just like, okay, I'm still trying to see it as simple rather than get alarmed by that. So if people are out in the field, like what we presently do is they have assignments to do when I'm teaching, right? And they're in a school site. And they have a log of hours, and their teacher signs off on that log. So we know how many hours they're there, and we know how many hours they're with that teacher, and the teacher also evaluates them, and the evaluations come back into the program. And so I think that it could be easily expanded a bit just to have the candidate identify what did you do with your resident teacher specifically, so the hours would be documented on what we already have as a log. But and then again, I'm not seeing the reviewers looking at those logs,
right,
unless students say, oh, nobody, no. Then you might say, well, where are those logs? But, it goes through the course instructors, and it's all dealt with within the program, and I think we can be accountable to those 5 hours. I really do. And then if it's spread out, if it's a part-time program like we saw today, if they have something like that where it's in their courses, it still would be in place whenever they have courses that require something of them in the schools. Right? So it seems doable. I hope. Yeah. I don't know if Pia sees it that way, but
I mean, I think so. I just think it would clarify it to put the intent in there so that people understand that what we really don't want is X. We also, I think, we don't want fixation on this 5 hours.
Right. No, we do not.
Right. Very true.
okay.
When you're talking about the part-time program, are you talking about Holy Names?
Yeah.
So I would say that Holy Names is a great example of why you need to have specific requirements, because they're not specifically a part-time program. They're a 2-year program that they let their candidates complete as they can. And without, I would say for Holy Names, they have actually created very specific log sheets that they're using to document those hours, because in working with that institution, I saw that it's really going to be necessary for them to know where their candidates are. If you're going to let somebody leave for a semester or more and then come back, you have to be able to open a file and know what you have done with them so far and where they are, because their candidates could get lost. So they're actually a good example of why that documentation is really necessary.
I still think what you've described meets what
Yeah.
I'm envisioning.
Yes, sure.
Yes.
It will.
Exactly.
They weren't previously doing it, so it was something for them that this narrower definition or more specific requirements has been a good thing for them and their candidates.
Right.
Can I just come back and clarify what you're asking about, Iris? The 5 hours, that specific requirement was connected with the in-class student teaching cycle, not the pre. You've got that, okay. Because I still heard someone saying, well, that would count for the 5 hours because it's required in my class. Well, usually it's not a requirement in your class that's going to result in these 5 hours.
Right.
It's going to be something that happens within the student teaching cycle while they're with their master teacher. And so it's going to be in that setting.
Right.
Yeah. That's what I heard from Terry, that it was just student teaching. But then I heard
from Catherine that there are different terms being used for different pieces.
Well,
And
and I think we have to actually clarify this when we write our document. What you're talking about and what Catherine's talking about counts in the 600 hours that has to be completed as part of the candidate's preparation. But just because they're counting those 600 hours doesn't mean the 5 hours a week is also at the same time. When they get an assignment as a student teacher and they have a master teacher, then the 5 hours a week starts.
Okay.
So if they don't have a master teacher, there's no 5 hours a week. So if they're out doing early observations, there's no requirement for 5 hours.
Easy.
We just have to explain that in writing.
And we just have to make sure that they understand that even if you call it like phase 2 field work, and they're in a classroom doing student teaching like activities, and they don't call it student teaching until phase 3, that it's still the experience once you're in a classroom assigned. So that was the vocabulary I was trying to clear up. Because vocabulary is more expansive than you could ever imagine.
Essential, yeah.
Got it.
So I think our plan would be to work on a draft. Is there anyone on the committee who would be willing to be a writing partner back and forth before we come to the August meeting, where we could actually send you a draft and you would give us some feedback?
What do we have? Kelly.
I have Bob, Kelly, Cheryl, and Iris.
Iris.
Perfect.
That's great.
That is great, because that will really help
That
us.
is
We'll get going and we'll get you a draft, and you can say, but this isn't clear to me yet, and then it'll be ready for the August meeting.
That's a good idea. Great idea.
You have an assignment.
All right. All right.
Okay, thanks.
Right.
Yeah,
This is a information item. No action. We're actually going to take a little action, but not the traditional COA action. So this is awesome that we have our committee members volunteering to do additional work besides what we normally do. So we have just 2 more items. Do you want to power through? Do you want to take a 5-minute break?
Power through.
Power through? Okay, let's do it. All right, item 21 is discussion of fee changes for joint CAPE CTC accreditation visits. Administrator Cheryl Hickey and Director Terry Clark will present this information action item. Ms. Hickey, will you begin, please?
Yeah, I can do this one pretty quickly. So CAPE used to pay about $25,000 to be part of the national accrediting partner for institutions that wanted to be both nationally accredited and state accredited. It was a partnership, and it's an annual fee. We used to split it with CDE. Now it's entirely assumed by the commission. They've redone their fee structure, and the good news is that it reduces our fees to about $18,000 annually. So that's the good news. But the bad news is, as they were explaining how they come up with this fee structure, what they have done is sort of, I'm going to use, this is my word, they penalized us for having joint visits. We had a phone call with Chris Koch and their finance director, and I can't remember his name.
Matt Vanover.
No, that's not the one I'm thinking about.
Oh,
Tran.
No, Tran, yes.
Tran,
I don't remember either.
Anyways, and we asked, can you explain to us why you're charging more for a joint visit? Because the commission actually appoints 2 members to serve on the national team. They work just like any other accrediting partner or member. They write to the standards, they participate, and they basically said, well, in one respect, they said the states are benefiting from the work of the national committee. So Terry and I took a breath and we said, well, it doesn't sound like that's, we're looking at it in the spirit of a partnership where we're both getting something from it. And they kind of backpedaled a little bit, I think, but I think they still think, well, we have to provide training to the person, which is fine, but we really pick up the cost for that person going out to the visit. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to us. At the same time, we don't have a lot of power over what they do. So we put out a survey to institutions that are CAPE accredited or NCATE accredited, because not all of them are CAPE accredited yet, to ask, what do you think of this? And we didn't get much. We got about 4 or 5 responses. Most of them thought, well, it is what it is, and we think CTC should pick it up. So it's a difference of about $7,000, I believe, $8,000. We would pay $10,000 if we just did concurrent visits where we are side by side with going and visiting the institution at the same time, bringing two teams, or $18,000 together. Now, I don't know where we go with this other than we wanted to inform you that this is a change. Terry, you probably want to add some more to this.
Actually, in California, the CAPE institutions would be getting charged the same amount less that the commission's getting charged extra, which is just very weird because if we're doing joint visits and we have California people, two of the people on the team are from California that the commission pays for, your institution isn't paying for them. So in some ways, even though all the institutions said, it makes more sense if the commission pays, it doesn't in some ways. Since there is this annual accreditation fee, it really does seem that joint CAPE visits are causing an additional charge, and it may not be possible to not pass this fee on to institutions.
Right.
But it's actually money you would have paid to CAPE, except they're charging us it now. So I'm not sure it's a...
Yeah.
Yeah, it is really confusing. And we just said to them, how can this even make sense to you? But they thought it did.
And the concurrent ones just cost everybody more.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So that's not a good alternative.
So as Terry said, we may not have any choice, even though, we could assume it and it is less money. We may not have any choice. The Department of Finance may see, hey, this is what it is, and so this needs to be passed along to the institutions. I don't know. We have some work to do in this area, but we have to respond to CAPE fairly quickly.
But if an institution wants national accreditation, they would be paying that anyway.
Right.
So I don't see why hesitate to not say
Charge
the
an
institution has to pay for those two people, right?
Right. Yep. So anyways, that's that item. We just wanted you to be aware of that. That's continuing to plague us at the moment.
Well, thank you. As you said, it's just an information item. So that brings us, unless anybody else has a comment on that, to our last item, which is the discussion and adoption of the 2018 meeting schedule. Ms. Vicky, will you begin?
Sure.
I don't think my notes say, does anybody need to recuse?
Oh.
I'm going to throw this whole thing.
It's a conflict of interest. I can't meet. So we have our August date set already, August 7th, and that will be a teleconference meeting. So here's the thing with teleconference meetings. We need to know your exact location on that day because every location has to be open to the public. Now, very rare chance that somebody is going to want to sit in with you at this meeting, but we need to publicize where these meetings are. So it's probably not best to have it at your home, but at your place of work or at a library or someplace where, you can post where you are. That day you're going to have to post that it is the Committee on Accreditation meeting. We can mock something up for you to use, but that's essentially, we need to abide by Bagley-Keene, and so we have to do that. So we have that date, August 7th. It will be very brief because the reason why we meet at the end of the summer without having a lot of other business, because we haven't started new accreditation site visits yet or anything like that, is we have programs that want to get up and running, and we don't want to hold them up from having to do that. So it should be very brief. And we will have you let us know where you're going to be. Yes, Iris?
I can try to make arrangements to do it if we need a quorum.
Okay.
But
you'll be gone?
Yeah, I'm in Colorado, away from any kind of technology. So I'd have to drive
okay.
2
Well, we don't
hours.
want you to do that.
But so no one else is going to miss it?
Okay, so Deb. And who else?
Probably me.
Kelly. Okay, so now we're down from 12 to 9. Okay, so we have a little bit wiggle room, but we can't lose more than one other person. So hopefully.
Let me ask a question. So it doesn't matter, let's say if I'm in Las Vegas.
That does not matter. Does not matter. Please don't be at a craps table, but yes.
What does matter mean?
Wasn't one of the people on today in Turks Caicos?
Yes, one of the
What? One of
guard was in Turkey.
Oh, man,
I
that's
didn't
just
see it.
annoying.
I thought she might be embarrassed. But
Yes.
Hilarious.
She sent me a picture of her yesterday. She says, "Would this be okay?" And she's in the water in her swimming suit.
Professional.
Yes, that's fine.
Or anything.
Just find a place that makes some sense. And then November 17th is our next one set. So what we're trying to set is 2018 on for that year. So these are our best guess. I know that we take into account as much as we can in terms of the conferences coming up. We always look at the same ones every year: CCTE, AERA, CAPE, NASDAQ, CAPIA, and CCAC, NICPIA. And some of those we don't know, so I don't know if, Deb, you have any more updated information for NICPIA. But that's what we have. So we're happy to entertain. And I think there was only one where on page 3 we indicated a preference, and that was February 22nd to 23rd versus 1 to 2. And I think that had to do with when the February commission meeting is just the week before, and that's not a lot of time for staff to catch our breath. So, but besides that, whatever works for you all. Oh, and March 22nd, 23rd. Oh, I guess we did identify.
Quite a few.
We did this one really early, so now it's all coming back to me. Yes, so we did indicate a preference by the italics.
Works for me.
Yeah.
So
Then
like
wasn't
the
June,
italics.
wasn't there a choice in June too?
yes,
Just take the late June.
the late June.
All
Right.
of the italics.
June is tough. Yeah, so all the italics are a staff preference, but we can do the other days. So this is an action item, so we need a motion.
All right. Sorry.
You guys are okay.
This is an action item. Do I have a motion?
For clarity,
Okay.
are we moving to accept the staff recommended date? Or, okay, the italicized one?
Yes.
And if we have a conflict with any of them, do we state it now, or how do you want to do that?
That's a good question, Cheryl.
Well, if it's just a conflict with just one of you and we can get a quorum, it's quite okay. It's if it's something that many of you are going to attend, then we probably should know about it.
Do we? Yeah, I was just going to say.
Okay, let's do that.
Let's
That's
go
a
there.
good idea.
Yeah.
Agreed.
All right. August 7th, we already talked about. November 17th. Anybody? Who
No, it's
don't-
already
That's
set.
already been
It's
said.
already starting with
Sorry.
February.
Sorry. February 22nd, 23rd.
Or for a second.
Are the hands up so that you can?
If you won't be here.
I won't be here either.
Okay.
All right.
And you can't be here either?
Okay, February 1st and 2nd.
Yeah, that's fine. I can do first and second.
I can't do the first and second.
Okay, you're out on first.
Okay, raise your hand if you can't. When I say date, if you can't
Okay.
come.
If you can't come.
Correct.
Cannot.
If you cannot.
February 1st, 2nd.
So we lose Cheryl.
February 22nd, 23rd. So does that?
It's up to you guys.
Okay.
We have a quorum either way.
I heard a moan.
I'm sorry. Well,
Hold on.
So Cheryl mentioned it in passing, but if the meeting's on the 1st and 2nd, that means that staff is preparing 2 agendas at one time, and that's why there's a preference. Now, if there can't be a quorum, then the preference doesn't matter.
But we can have a quorum with 2 people missing.
Yes.
Yes, it was the same.
But if somebody gets sick, I mean, it just reduces our
Exactly.
thing. And if only one person's missing for sure on February 1st and 2nd, that might be a better choice for us.
So
Avoid any close calls.
So the problem here is that also that means we're working on agenda items over the holidays. That's the other issue when it's early February. With 2 people gone, we still have plenty of room for even a couple of sick people. So I'm just putting it out there.
All right, Member
While we have
Erickson?
room.
Okay, we're going to go through the dates first real quick. All right, March 22nd, 23rd. Anybody missing? Going to be missing.
I might miss the first day.
we should
I'm going
Okay.
to try to rearrange.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
Raise your hands if we're missing.
So we might miss
Do
2
on
down
the-
there.
on the
All
first
right.
day.
May 10th and 11th.
That's graduation for so many people, that second Friday.
Okay, raise your hand. Graduation, if you're
Okay.
going to miss May 10th and 11th. We have
That's graduation, okay.
just one?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
No, yes.
Two?
Two,
Two.
okay, sounds good.
June 28th and 29th. Everybody kind of said they wanted to come. That one, all right.
Does that work for everybody? Okay.
And then, are we doing an August one then?
Oh, did we skip August?
Yeah, we did.
We sure did.
I may
It
not
was-
be around in June.
Okay,
Maybe
so
yeah.
possibly losing one.
Oh, commencement's on Friday the 12th. I'm okay.
Okay, good.
Oh, wait, that was this year. I'm sorry. I don't have it. For
Terry, could you look up the August? Oh, you don't have a
Don't have a
computer.
calendar with me.
No, it's May 11th.
Oh, thanks.
I
All
just
right,
checked.
November 7th and 8th? Anybody going to be gone that they know of?
What was the August?
I'd rather do that than.
The commission meeting is August
Yeah, no
2nd
kidding.
and 3rd.
November 7th and 8th?
2018.
Is that a,
All right,
You went to Wednesday, Thursday then. Did you
that's a
intend to
Wednesday,
do that?
Thursday.
7th and 8th?
Yeah.
Okay, August 2nd and 3rd.
You know why? Because
I
that going to be a
August
3-day
15th through
weekend.
17th is,
think that was a 3-day weekend. I think that was around Veterans Day.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what are we?
That works.
Yes, that shouldn't have said Thursday, Friday.
We're looking for a one day in August.
So which one are we going?
No, Wednesday, Thursday
The 7th.
for November.
Because of Veterans Day.
Well, the 9th.
And what do we
Let me see where August.
We're still waiting.
So August,
what is the November date picked?
okay, hold on.
7th and 8th.
Day. It's
So-
Wednesday, Thursday.
August is not in here and it needs to be. So we need August, it would be August 6th to be aligned with what we're doing this year, which is a Monday, and it'll be a teleconference.
Oh,
I
Monday.
assume it's the same thing.
That probably will be a problem for me again.
Okay. We could change it to any time that week if you would like.
It doesn't help me.
It doesn't help, so we'll
Cheryl?
just leave it the 6th.
Cheryl, the commission meeting's on the 2nd and 3rd, and that would be the Monday directly after the commission meeting.
Okay. All right, great.
So,
So they changed
FYI.
they
So-
changed it to August.
Do we want to go for the 13th then? Gives you a week in between?
That would work fine.
All right, let's do that.
August
That's okay.
13th.
No.
That's November we're talking about?
Nope,
August 13th.
We have
It's
one
usually a
person
teleconference.
missing.
Okay.
I might be able to make that one.
Okay.
Okay. And we can always change it as we get closer if it turns out that we're losing a quorum.
Yeah, we just need to get something on the books.
Okay.
All right. With
Can we go through the dates one more time?
With our amendment, we have, let's starting in February 22nd and 23rd, 2018. March 22nd and 23rd, 2018. May 10th and 11th.
We had graduations there with 2 people.
Yeah,
Is
but
that
we
what
were still.
wanted to still do? Okay.
Yeah.
June?
June 28th and 29th, 2018.
Okay.
August 13th,
Mhm.
2018.
Can I ask one more question?
Well, one
And-
more. Let's get through one more.
November 7th, 8th,
Okay.
2018.
Great. Yes.
Did we create for anyone a situation where you're missing 3 meetings? Okay.
That's
Thanks.
good. That's
Good
a good
question.
Yeah.
All right. Do I have a motion that we accept the schedule for the next month's?
That was the easiest one ever. too,
Okay.
I just want to
I
say.
know.
Motion by Member Frelly, second by Member Forbes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
Okay,
Thank you, Ms.
great.
Hickey.
Sure.
Having no further business, do you want to say the rest?
Yes.
Having no further business, we adjourn the June 2017 meeting of the Committee on Accreditation. The next meeting of the Committee on Accreditation will be a teleconference meeting on August 7th, 2017.
Good job, Pia.
Can you unplug me?
There's a little delay on the mics while they
Yeah.
That's why
Yes.
talking.